And with little necessary introduction, here's part 2.
There's a really interesting thread here. So you kind of got this bug for working with gear and equipment, but you also have this thread of watching yourself playing music in your bebop band, but also Steina's work as a violinist kind of drew you in. There's this thread kind of gear and this thread of like music, and then you get to New York and you see video and play, and that captures your attention. But at some point, you start combining all of these into almost like a single thread. So you start making gear that manipulates video. You start working with synthesizers to develop sound, but working, developing structures and developing more tools to make that work in a video space, to make video work in that space. And you start mixing and matching things. To me, that was a time where if you were going to get into electronics, someone had to bless you to be into electronics, right? And if you were going to be you even talk about your film studies, someone has to bless you to allow you to be a film editor or a film director, right? Mm-hmm. It seems to me like one of the harder things of the whole thing was just basically saying, I'm not going to wait for anyone to bless me on any of this. I'm just going to do it.
I tell you, I have a complete explanation for this. See, just to take from when you take machines apart, eventually you make it into average experience, because you know how the things work, and you see the gears and how they translate from this motion to this motion. Mm-hmm. And my father was sort of looking at it, and it didn't stop me, and I polluted the whole place by this garbage, but it didn't kick me out of this place, because he was kind of looking at me because he was hoping that I would end somewhere as a machinist or something. But that was not me. I was somehow a little more ambitious, because I was looking for the mystery. What is the mystery? What's the next step? So then also, let's say I went to this industrial school, and after I was sent to a factory, which was a very sophisticated factory because I got grades, but still I didn't know anything about mathematics, see, and I still don't know anything about mathematics. Numbers for me was the only mystery I never could penetrate, never. And so, I was sent to this factory which produced hydraulic machinery. But then when I understood that the hydraulics is something that you have to calculate with high mathematics, then after 2 days, they first gave me this paper and said, copy this. It was a complicated machinery, hydraulic system. And I had it there for 2 years on that board, but I didn't touch it. Now imagine I'm in this communist factory producing also this kind of war material, and they were like hypnotized by me, because all I did, I sat in the corner and wrote my poems, poetry and prose. And then I had a friend there, or 2 friends, and we would go after the work to pick up mushrooms in the forest. It was just the next outside of the town. And I lived like that for 2 years, and they didn't kick me out. Even the boss knew that I haven't touched this work for 2 months in communist system, because if they would know that outside of the factory, I'll go to jail, and they would go to jail.
Right.
I'm still absolutely stunned. Who organized? What kind of spirit could defend it? And it's so abstract that I can't even tell you anything about it. There were two communists sitting in the further place, and there was about maybe 20 guys working, and they knew that I was not doing, that I was interested in culture or something, but they didn't do anything. And my boss, he was playing tennis with my sister, you know, so it was just kind of, I have no explanation to it. But then I realized I'm not made to do this, and probably I'm not going to survive here. I'll be in jail soon. So I went to film school and applied for being accepted, which I was. Later, when I asked my guy that was my teacher in film school, I said, "How come that you get me in here?" And he said, "We didn't care for your photography, some kind of movies you made. We liked your poetry." First time I realized I had some kind of a supervision by unknown mythological plane. I was part of something that navigated me step by step through my life. Now,
so I'm sorry for the interruption there,
No,
but you said that basically it was your poetry that was what got you into film school.
I didn't know that, but then what I'm saying now it's 1 point by 1 point, so rational. Like from that, when I asked Steina, take me out, she said yes. Then, so that was my way out. So it was the moment of Iceland for half a year or whatever. Then it was going to living with the uncle of her in Pennsylvania. Then it was going to New York to learn language, and then it was all automated place by place, and I ended eventually through Buffalo to other places, and it's so rational and beyond my choices. Of course, Steina at that time is a player in this whole thing, and so I cannot explain anyway why I'm sitting here and talking to you.
I mean, at some point you had to decide to learn electronics.
Oh yes.
At some point, and not through traditional means. Traditional means of the time was like either doing an apprenticeship or going to a university, and instead you had to find your own way into that.
It's not my way, but the demon that navigated me all my life
Okay.
actually gave me the power of being able to assemble. As long as I get a schematic, I could do anything.
I see.
But to struggle, I could do only basics, you see. I could make simple inventions of the electronics, like sort of working signals, that I could, and put them into different categories and try how would they look like in this environment, how they would. Yeah, I was pretty good at that. But to go and step into like a digital world without numbers, which I never got,
Mm-hmm.
I just cannot move this.
I see.
Couldn't really function in a digital world. I could apply and I could build digital system because I had these students that could do everything except build.
Right.
And he designed this fabulous kit there, Jeffrey Shire, and he was phenomenal. Also good fiddler, and a little crazy, and still alive. And he gave me these designs on the paper, and I day and night that was why that time that was the way he put things together. I made very little mistakes. He looks at it and then find out it's one mistake, and I was a little embarrassed. And it was that if I could do the physical, and if I had this garden students, we got the Steina, we got immediately to the whole different world. And I don't know. But
we went through this. I mean, first we learned the analog world.
Yes.
And
that
basically
was piece of
waveforms and signal, things like that.
Yeah.
And noise, as it applies to video, not as it applies to audio.
We got vocabulary completely correct and invented some of that,
and then we lived through the transition over to digital practically. I mean, learning Boolean algebra, realizing that diagonal line was only achieved by steps, by points in aligning themselves to become a line.
That's called the nomenclature. We got that.
But we didn't even that much get it out of books, although we did get it out of books. But we got it mostly out of the student.
Yeah, the touch also.
And the daily struggle, because he also made mistakes.
Right.
And then he would have this thing, because it was new to him too, he would say, now here is a chip, and this chip can either do this, out of which you would get this kind of images, or that, out of which you would get other kind of images. So which do you want? And Woody always said both.
Yeah, I was just like, you didn't even have to finish that sentence for me, because I just saw that coming out as well. Well, both.
Yeah, and then eventually he would say, because he had this idea that the left brain should speak to the right brain, so he was engaged in a lot of babble that we didn't even have to understand over here. Mm-hmm. And he would then start saying, well, this chip can do this and this chip can do that, what do you want? Both. He would always answer it too, because he knew what the answer would be. So this was our education.
Yeah, it was our education. And there was none other, because the others were maybe better educated, but they were rigid,
Sure,
they didn't understand how to fly. And this guy was a fiddler, so he flew immediately.
Flew all the time, right. Well, and now the other people that were working on video at the time, at video exploration, what were they doing that was different? Were they more working with? Actually, were there other people that were kind of exploring on parallel paths, or was everyone doing their own thing?
No, there was Eric Siegel, who built the first video synthesizer.
He was real breakthrough,
He just he had found a way to fix a TV set to be kind of abstract and absurd. And this gallery guy comes by and says, yes, but can you do it in color? And Eric, who was 17 years old then, instinctively said, of course. And then he had never done it or anything, but then he got a color TV with red, green and blue, and out of that came a colorizer, which Namjoon is very much now credited with, but Nam saw Eric make it. So, and colorizer, if you think about it, is an incredible breakthrough.
That's a game changer, yeah.
Totally. Nobody had even thought of such.
There were about maybe 5 people we knew intimately, also on the West Coast and everywhere, and we started to communicate. And they did actually systems that we inherited from them, and then we could operate them as but then of course we didn't need more. Do we need more?
No, we had a community, and we thought that it was just a fraction of the whole community, but it wasn't. That was it. There was.
So you thought you were looking at a sliver, and you were actually looking at the whole thing.
Yeah, because there were those two guys in Chicago.
But we could use their machines, and they were glad that we were using the machine.
Oh.
But we had no problem using it, of course.
No, but there was like what's his name, Dan Sandin.
Yeah, I was going to say the Sandine thing.
Yeah, because he was a mathematician. He loved, and
he loved numbers.
He built his whole machine on numbers and on inversions, the positive to negative. He said, I will make a machine that can multiply, divide, add, and subtract. That was the first thing he came up with. And that's the last thing we would ever have thought.
Right, sure, of course.
And they were the West Coast. They had in San Francisco experiments in television, national experiments in television.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they were good, and they were colleagues. Some to this day, like Steve Beck.
No,
that was it.
It was the lucky community, you see. We have not been many, but we really could communicate and exchange and operate, see.
And when you communicated, you sent letters to each other.
We visit, usually.
Oh, you would visit.
There was a knock on the door.
Yes, knock on the door.
Usually meant also that we had to house those
That's
people.
right. We had to put them in the floor, you know. But in Buffalo, we had a actually good studio, and so we slept in a corner there, and we could let people stay for a while, and they work, and they gave us all the secrets, and they disappeared.
What made you go to Buffalo from New York City?
Again, this is one of these mysterious things, you see, because there was this strange man, and he's still alive. He was a professor at that time in Buffalo at the university, and he put together a film group, you know, I don't know if you know all his name.
Gerald O'Grady.
Yeah, his name was O'Grady, but there was Paul Sharretts.
Oh, we had it was a very good faculty, and Buffalo was full of people who were interesting and important. The university was just astounding, but it was in this miserable place called Buffalo. So we didn't pay much attention to the city, but eventually when the snow got to be as high as our shoulders, we decided we would have to leave.
Give us the names of the guys of our faculty. It was
Paul Sharretts, Hollis Frampton, Tony Conrad, James Blue.
And there's one more.
No. But then there were the other departments. There was like the Creative Associates was the musical entity, and everybody. We met absolutely everybody.
Yeah, this
from Cage
for us.
through
This was a
Lucas
very
Foss,
important place.
everybody was there.
Yeah.
Or came through.
And we got educated. Also, I understood finally filmmakers, because they were already half through. You know, they dealt as frames. You know, that was all. They kind of not all, but you know, less narrative as a film, but a lot of kind of interesting. I have no name for that, but they were moving away from the traditional narrative talk about people loving each other and kissing each other. It all was gone, you know. There's no that.
But also to be in upstate New York meant that we very shortly after we moved, we met Bill Viola, who was studying in Syracuse, and we met Gary Hill, and we thought they were very close colleagues. And Gary still is a close colleague. We were talking about it yesterday when we met him, that we still share something. But Bill slowly drifted into holiness. But he was a real experimenter when he was in Syracuse.
Really?
Oh, yeah, and he is technically very endowed. He understands systems, and I kind of miss him, but he chose not to be our colleague. That's his choice. You didn't know that, huh?
No, I didn't. I never realized that you interacted and then broke with him in any way?
Well, he would come and we would compare. We weren't
Right.
really interacting as such, But he was discovering the same things at the same time.
So what was his problem with you?
We have never had a personal problem with Bill, never.
Okay.
It's fun to meet him every 10 years or so. But he decided to become a kind of a holy man or middle class guru, or I don't know what he is, and that was very far from our interest.
Right. Interesting. So, how long were you actually in? How long were you in Buffalo? Well, first of all, the kitchen. Was the kitchen before you went to Buffalo?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we didn't even really talk about that.
No, it was a typical Vasulka move, that if they don't want to do it for you, you do it yourself.
Sure.
Because we would ask our colleagues who had showrooms if we could show there, and we couldn't because
Right.
we were somehow doing useless video,
Right.
and they were trying to save the world and fix the traffic light up on 125th Street, and we were just out of there, and so we'll just have to do our own. And that was and then they all came eventually when
Oh, sure.
the kitchen was successful and asked to have a show at our place.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
But it was very simple, but very without a doubt. We just went to this man that it was an old building, hotel, tall, but no people would live there anymore.
Right.
And eventually it collapsed and we were not around that time anymore. But we got a whole room, large room, and still were in progress other places in that floor. But the guy that ran it, what was his name? Psyche Beck, yeah. He was, what was he doing? He was
kind of a builder contractor and very interested in the arts,
yeah,
like a lot of New Yorkers are.
right, and also had this lady with him, and that was very much interested also in us. I don't know why, because she actually pushed him into this.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we got this room there, which we had to fix, and clear and make a floor and everything. And we had a couple of friends that were specialty guy that did the floors. And then we opened it, and it was for free, not for audience, but all the people that wanted to show something were welcome. And then we did a very small amount of donations, and then it became for 2 years very active.
See, we were always counting our luck. All these people want to shop here in the kitchen, and then only when we were through with the kitchen in 2 years and wanted to do something else, we realized that we were it. We were the only place. The other places of action had all closed down and moved
Right.
away, and so unbeknownst to us, we felt so grateful when Lamont Young would want to come and do something there. So
And at the same time, Lamont Young was very grateful that you exist because that was the only place he could play.
yeah, that's the
Right.
part we didn't know. And people came from Bell Labs, like
yeah.
that Max.
No,
What was
Max Matthews?
Yes, they came. His whole entourage. There was Emmanuel Kent, and there was other
Right.
people in the visual, and then they all had their Bell Lab evening in the kitchen.
Listen, we did not expect anything like that, but it took over immediately. But when we left, they actually, when it collapsed, of course, it was a whole different other group of people
Right.
that we went to. We were snatched to Buffalo,
Right.
and he said, "Okay, guys, it's all yours." But now they're trying to struggle with who actually, what was the kitchen before or after.
Yeah.
And they have a problem, these people, because they, we had the origins,
Right.
and then they inherited it, but they're trying to get rid of us, but they can't. You see, they try.
They have ever since always tried to have a purposeful place, and that was the only thing we were uninterested in.
Right.
Any purposeful. So that was a kind of a split.
Yeah.
Right.
But they are doing nice work, and they are still, in a way, the only place for what is done in that kind of a performance.
Okay, so thanks for that little detour, because I wanted to make sure that we got some of that history. So you're in Buffalo, and you're actually meeting and working with these people as they either drop in or kind of drive through Buffalo. How long were you in Buffalo?
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
It took 6 years for the snow to get up to your shoulders?
Yeah, because it was the 4th year when it got up to the navel, and then the 6th year when it got up to the shoulder, and we would have liked to throw some mint into the meter, the parking meter, but there was no meter. It was all under
It was
snow.
all under the snow.
Yeah, so that was a good exit point.
Right.
Um,
So 6 years. Where were you when you got there, and where were you when you left in terms of like the body of work and stuff like that?
It was actually our most prolific period. I see it now. We bought Rat scan processor.
From analog to digital.
Yeah.
That was our glory.
Right.
That's where we went through it all.
Completely.
Interesting. So you got a Rut Etra at that point, and that was when
That
you
was
started
back
playing with the scan work.
I was in 74 or
Uh-huh.
73, just after we moved to Buffalo. And we were on salary for the first time in a very long time.
Oh my.
On a salary. We were salary people for 6 years. The only salary really we ever had in our lives.
Yeah.
So we could buy it. You know?
And also for us to meet the film people was interesting and
Yeah.
essential. And they also were very much influenced what we are doing. They were coming by and snooping around, and but they're still filmmakers, are filmmakers. We could get them out of the filmmaking.
Mhm.
Sure. Now, I don't want to get too far just thinking about this, though, in terms of technology, too, because kind of a parallel track to all of the development and use of technology and tools was the development of artwork, and particularly, Steina, of your work as a performer and as a video artist. And this is the time where on the art, there was a technology track here, but there was also art track where you were exploring with new forms of editing, you were exploring with new methods of performing, and finding a way to build video as a performance instrument rather than just a linear time track. Tell me some of how that went, and what were some of the roadblocks or decisions that you had to make to accomplish those things?
Well, when we were in kitchen, it was the audience performance did whatever place, sort of from the afternoon for preparation to the event in the evening. But then it was hours after that. We threw the people out, and we had this gorgeous studio there in Manhattan, and that is when all this idea of multimedia came up, because we were all doing. We would do as many channels as there were monitors in the place, and performances, electronic. People would always have to bring their own stuff because we didn't have any. So they brought in synthesizer. We saw the ARP when it came out, and before that there had been Bookland, there was already Moog, and so on and so forth. So it was very educational for us, and for me to see that I wouldn't have to do a single channel. But then it was, strangely enough, Gary Hill sort of pulled me also into something, because he did this fabulous 6-channel audio installation, I mean video installation as a corridor. And I said, he just challenged me. If that punk can do it, then I can do it. And I started just pouring them out,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and for me it was the way out of editing and single channel and that thing. I have to tell Gary this. I don't think I ever told him. Not even yesterday when he was sitting next to me.
It is interesting, that period is now in my shadow.
Yeah.
I can't get there. For the beginning, yes, but when we started to do the digital part, you see, suddenly I have a lot of documentation on that, on building, because I wired all the boards, because our student was giving me the papers,
Right.
and overnight, he was always working overnight and I was working all day, and so I could do that. But then I just don't remember, once we start programming it, how that happened. But you must have a better memory. Did we create some software?
Yeah, we had this character called Walter Wright. He was a phenomenal programmer.
Yeah.
And but kind of into uselessness. He was only interested in doing all the parameters, running all the registers, so that every color could go from the darkest to the brightest. Every movement would go from beginning to end. There were like these endless ramps and patterns and everything. But that was our school, right? And then we also had some students, because we bought a computer, I think 75 or 76, one of the very first micro or mini computers for personal use. It was DEC. Do you remember DEC?
Yeah, actually, my first computer systems I worked on were DEC computers, the 11780 and 11.
Yeah, 11. And the problem with that
11,
one was it was an octal system.
Right.
So we struggled with the octal system. And you learn enormous amount to just try to make anything move. We didn't know that once you had a computer, you have to make them move. They don't, it's
It
not
doesn't
like,
do it for you.
no,
Right.
not like analog.
Right.
So we got the characters like Vic
I
Norris
see.
and Bill Blackman.
That's in my shadow. I can't get that.
Yeah.
And, but prolific, because we also recorded it. We have a lot of material that we have never shown, because it's learning,
It's
material.
test material, yeah.
On the videos and various records. So one day when we really get our shit together, there will be a good thing for history, because that period was unique. And no, actually, many other people started to do complicated digital machinery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once you left Buffalo, where did you go?
Santa Fe.
That's when you made the move to Santa Fe.
And the most attractive thing to us was 300 days of sunshine a year.
Oh, I hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't any kind of intellectual community or anything else.
Was there anyone there at all?
No.
There wasn't.
I don't think that.
No, but then people started coming, partially for us, like say Gene Youngblood
Right.
and then the school. But,
Right. SFAI, or
the Santa Fe College
Santa Fe College.
that hired David Stout.
Right.
And then things started really moving.
Yeah,
Sure.
there was no machine made by anybody.
No.
So when you first moved there, it was literally just to, well, I imagine, especially, I made a similar move. I went from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is almost always gray, to Colorado, which is almost always sun. So I totally understand why you did it, but it was just literally to escape the environment. And why Santa Fe? Did you just like pick a map, or did someone just whisper in your ear? Or?
We had driven through there, but you see, Santa Fe sounds a little bit like Shangri-La.
You're right.
Yes, we kind of couldn't leave actually, Steina.
So it wasn't a particularly rational decision, Santa Fe versus everything else.
We didn't. Wasn't a target for sure.
But what's interesting is you guys seem to have. I mean, y'all are in love with Santa Fe.
But these are these mysterious things that you cannot explain.
Right. Again, it's your demon driving the bus for you here.
We stayed there. We actually rotated a little bit around, and then we realized that is kind of a magic place. And there was these. Remember when we were watching these things that were on the top of these? And I said, "Shit, this is unusual." And so we were magnetized. We were just running around for 3 days.
Yeah, but I remember Woody driving up and down there, these little, what are they called? It's ghetto in Spanish, the little enclaves of Spanish and everything. And he says, "I think I like it here. This is Catholic." And that is already to me a great shock to
What did I
say.
say?
Yeah, you said, "It's Catholic. Sin around every corner."
Thank you. No, it was, bare.
Right.
It's like nudity everywhere somehow. I don't know how to explain it.
Santa Fe is one of those places that it has a siren song for certain kinds of people.
Yeah.
So you moved there, and just to get away, did you have? So by this time you've probably gathered up quite a pile of electronics and gear and computers and all this stuff. How big of a task was it even moving there?
Not much.
But remember, there was Los Alamos National Laboratory.
That's true.
And that was my magnet.
Sure, of course.
After I discovered the city or town, then it was only about an hour
Right.
to drive there, and you could find the highest quality pieces of complete assemblies, and they took them home, and I could again take them apart.
Sure.
So I was it was a deja vu.
Right.
And then after they closed down, there still is a place in what's the town beyond the big town beyond us down there, south Albuquerque. There still is one or two places that you can see that ancient, war legacy.
Yeah, but greed came into it, because when it was there in Los Alamos, they were so desperate to get rid of it. And what were we getting rid of? Or say tempest corrector, which was a magic word to everybody in
Right.
video.
All day.
And then that we had to pay minimum $2,000 up to $5,000 for. And it would be laying out there in the yard for $20. And you only had to plug it in. It was fully functional.
Yeah, it was
They just wanted to get rid of it because they were done.
And that was the idea, that after every project was finished, they had to get rid of everything.
That was a rule.
Well, it's actually interesting, because I know, just from my own experiments with electronic circuitry, there's a tremendous number of people that deal with surplus electronics, all based out of New Mexico.
Really?
And I wonder if it isn't because of this culture that churned through electronics and then had to make it go away.
Oh, yes.
I think it might have been part of why they got grant. They got a grant to buy something or solve some problem, and the idea was that it would fall to the taxpayers after the original idea, when people were still benign and moral.
Right.
And then the auctioneers realized what they had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, you see, when I now look at the kind of assembly of what we've got, it's almost 1,000 pieces. See, we had one time, and we tried to auction it one day. After that, probably about 3 years after, we put an auction, but nobody would even touch it.
So, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this move to Santa Fe, because you went from New York, where there was a lot of performance and a lot of activity. You go to Buffalo, which has a lot of activity, and you have kind of this itinerant group of people coming through. You moved to Santa Fe. Did people start visiting you just because you were there?
No, this visiting us started from day one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we have a fond memory of all these people. We called them the cosmic messengers. And they would knock on our door and say, "My name is Wyndham and I do video. Come in," you know.
Right.
And so that has always been traffic around us. Actually, now there is no traffic anymore. People are so
We're a
polite.
different generation, you know.
Well, they sometimes call. They wouldn't dare to just come and knock on the door. They call and very humbly ask if they can talk to us. It's different.
It is different.
Yeah.
And so eventually then, between the school, Gene Youngblood coming down there, which he must have been a hoot to be around.
He was good to be around.
Yeah.
He was very good. And as David Stout said yesterday, it is undoubtedly Gene Youngblood who got him in there
really.
and everything.
Sure. Who are some of the other people that ended up in Santa Fe that are of interest to you?
Well, there are several like converts that we came across pre-video and now do video, and who have been artists in the past, but not particularly in this field.
Right.
And case in point are, say, the Hamiltons, because now Bruce Hamilton is, who we converted to video definitely, is now my advisor, because he is much better on stuffs, you know, and on the internet and knowing.
Okay, so like advising you on like how to present your work, you mean?
No, how to clean up our computer and.
Oh, I see. Oh, right. Okay, so he's like your consultant.
And he's a consultant.
Yeah, got it.
And unfortunately, he became rich. He inherited money with his wife, and so they don't need us anymore.
They don't need us, right?
This is terrible. Corey is our product in a way.
Right.
And David Stout, though he was full-fledged. He did very interesting analog audio.
Yeah, he's talked about it. He's never shown me it.
His work, actually, analog work, is all sitting in our storage.
Is it?
Yeah, and he only has to give you permission, but then you have to transfer it to digital.
Right.
He has much better way of doing it because he is at this hoity-toity college there in university in Texas. But obviously his heart is not with them. But I agree with you, it should be all digitized and
needs to be made available so that people can understand. I feel like we're not doing a really good job of showing people what's been done so that they can build on top of it.
Yeah.
Instead, we're showing them the software that they can use, and people are often reinventing the same thing. Right?
Yeah.
It's two different things, and being exposed to and being sort of like compelled to do more, it isn't always happening. Even in the universities, whose kind of job it is to do that, I don't see a lot of that right now. At least not in experimental video artwork. I don't see a lot of that. Maybe I just haven't looked in the right place.
Well, we have a large collection of work that we liked, and then we stopped collecting around the turn of the century, millennium.
Yeah.
That's when we stopped collecting. It was.
And now lately we have ventured into Dome. See, there's a dome near Santa Fe.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a little obsolete, and I also would like to update it or redo it, because we are not into looking up, you know.
Right.
I have a bad part of the brain here. And so now we want to look down rather, you know. So, but they are okay because they understand us and also themselves, because we are trying to recover or set them into horizontality or actually looking down a little bit, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And that's
Now make the Thomas
okay,
kind of a swimming pool.
And we
And
saw
the audience would be on balconies.
Peering
above it.
down. Yeah.
That's-
That's an interesting twist.
yeah, right.
In all the people that are doing different kinds of video, it seems like the people that are doing domes
Yeah.
kind of have a little bit of a flavor of what you talked about in the early days. That most of the domes are part of museums or part of something else, and they don't want you to come in and mess around with the equipment. And it's like a lot of old and hardware-based equipment, although most of them are changing over to digital systems. But what you have is you have these groups of people that wait until they leave for the night and then sneak in there and
Yeah.
start experimenting with the domes.
Yes.
And again,
Yeah.
it's almost a deja vu of the early days of video. People doing stuff that nobody wants, touching stuff that nobody wants them to touch. You know.
Yeah.
But that's why we can do it, because it's obsolete. But the guy that runs it knows what he's doing. He can put it together. There's a lot of software that we have never seen before, and so they can make. And we look at the work that we have done, which you can hardly recognize it because it's so all concentrated and stitched nicely. So if there would be updates of quality of projection and lenses and all that stuff and light, that would be probably worth it. But
Right.
we are now using it as experiment, and then when there is another possibility, we could probably go and emerge in a kind of a, large sort of format. But we just started about one month ago. So, but we are welcome and we can do it. We can go there now. We've invited every week now for the next month or two. So we'll be finding the knowledge, how things are, and try to actually produce for it. And especially these abstract work become magical more than they are. Because I don't know if the extraterrestrial narrative exists, and we will just try to experiment further. And yes, it's actually fitting okay. But everything actually fits. When they stitch it the right way, you get, and they can squeeze it and expand it.
There are some spatial things that happen in a dome that are pretty magical.
That's magical, yeah.
Like no straight line is straight.
I know.
Yeah.
That's just blood.
I know, it's crazy.
It's very fantastic.
Yeah.
So we are finally getting taste of it and access for any problem. You just go there and he puts it up and he's smart enough to operate it. And,
That's amazing. That's cool.
We'll see if we can leave the legacy there. And, my mind has to now operate on a different level, which is all. I can do, the new, but I cannot do the old. I don't
You can't
remember
redo the old.
Yeah. So, but I could still do the new, but because I have a memory that can catch, but not all, like it's just the basics.
So here we are in Seattle. You're doing your part of the 4x3 exhibition. They bring you in. You get to do some panels, talk to people, and that's one portion of what you do. You basically bring your work into a place and exhibit it and kind of interact with the public in a way that hopefully can clue them in a little bit on what your work was about. What are some of the other things that you're doing though now? Because I know you're active with the archives in some way.
Yeah.
The last time we met was actually a discussion about the archives.
Right.
Bad.
I mean, in my case, I'm still cleaning after myself, and but I'm tempted now to enter something else, because now it's possible. Steina goes steadily; she goes up and up and up. But I don't know if you condition, or if you see it that way. What is your...
Yeah, because you're still doing performance. You're still an active performer, right?
Not really.
Really?
No, it's just there is no demand for it. There's nobody asking for it. I would like to stop by Colorado and get a little more done with Corey. And Tim always says, yeah, by all means, and that's the end of that, and so on. But now I'm not really that active. First of all, that box that you know is kind of unfriendly. It is not a friendly box. And I would need to have some more
You talking about the connection to your violin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need also some crazy harmonizer, something that is unpredictable and doesn't do what you think you do. Because it is nice to be on the stage, and especially in my case, because any tone or any strike will do something,
Right.
and it will surprise me more than the audience just thinks that I am in charge, but I get surprised. Do you have flangers that go just one direction?
Do I have what?
Flangers. I mean, I liked always to use flangers,
Right.
and the one that was called barber pole.
Yes, a barber pole. Yeah.
And then I didn't understand that whenever I tried flanger after that, they always went
They always
back,
go down and up,
yeah.
right. It's amazing sound, yeah.
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Only my learning curve has slowed down to almost flat.
Well, but
It's not a curve anymore.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And as always, I learn a bunch of new stuff about the people I talk to, and so it was a real pleasure for me.
So, do you ever listen to Terry Gross?
Yeah. Well, I used to be obsessed with her
Really?
on NPR. Well, first of all, the same last name. How could I not, right?
Oh, yeah.
And but I always thought that she was a exceptionally good interviewer.
She was in the first and almost only class I ever taught.
Oh, really?
And she was in Buffalo. I tell you, there were interesting people who came through Buffalo.
Well, it's funny because I actually, in my digital software world, there's a lot of people that went through Buffalo and that too.
Really?
It's a place that, maybe it's because they are so remote.
Yeah.
They push hard to get the best, really interesting people.
No, it's magic, because the guy who helped us to set this whole exhibition in Germany, he was just a noisy kid, a local guy in the neighborhood, and he stands in front of the synthesizer, video synthesizer, and is fascinated. And Tony Conrad stops by and said, "Are you fascinated by this?" And the kid says yes. And he went all the way to become full-fledged. That's Bob O'Kane.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of them, like the guy who worked with us, it was because it was the cheapest school in the system.
Right.
And SUNY is almost for free or worse than.
Right.
But of the almost for free, the Buffalo was almost free or more than any other. So we got kind of a lot of so-called dredge, but it turned out just to be something else.
Well, what's interesting is the school that David is in now, University of North Texas, that's where I went to school.
What school? The
University of North Texas?
The
one in Denton? That's the one that David teaches at?
Yeah.
That when I went there, that was North Texas State University.
Yeah.
But back then, it was I could work a week and pay for my school for a semester, right? So that's how I did it. I would work for a week, get enough money, pay for the semester, and then kind of scrabble from there. But it was there again. It was that thing where it was the cheapest university in the system, so it kind of got the dregs of students, except those were the bizarrely interesting students. And it was a fantastic place. So I'm going to shut this down now. Thanks again so much.
Okay, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you check in on Sunday to find out what's next.